From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
So everybody, we're going to take this party to a whole different level. Are you ready for my favorite listener correspondence that we've had in quite a long time? Are you ready for it?
I wasn't ready
for it. I was not ready when
Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not. Okay,
went into my eye holes.
I know this one too, but I read it and I'm still not sure whether I'm ready for it. But let's give it a go.
I'm just going to read this and we'll talk about it afterwards. This comes from Lori. Good evening. I've waited to process what happened before emailing you guys. The week after Halloween, that's 2020, my favorite holiday, I woke up around 5 a.m. from a dream where my loved one and I were cuddling while watching television. Note, Lori does not live with her significant other. She is dreaming about being with her significant other who is not at her house. Coming back in. I woke up lying on my left side, that's important, alone in my bed in my home. And then my eyes shot open and I tried to stay as still as possible because as I lay there staring at the wall, I felt my toes curled around his toes. I still felt toes, but I was alone in my bed. I was scared to roll over. I was afraid to move at all. Then the toes were gone. I kept telling myself it was just a fading dream and that I'm not going to see anything when I roll over, and I roll over. This lightning white figure in the shape of a very tall, thin man sat up. We were face to face. I could see through him. I kept reminding myself that I was awake. Then the man spoke loud, with a deep voice, and very, very fast. So fast that I have no idea what he was saying. I said, "No, no, no," and he disappeared. I stayed there for a bit, then I had to go get my oldest son to sleep with me. Okay, we're going to pause here for a moment. First of all, what an experience, right? It feels similar to what we just discussed with our DMT entities that we've seen, or that humans have been experiencing, where there's this energy being that somehow manifests. It reminds me of sleep paralysis, especially laying on the side there, experiencing something like that. But there are reasons that we're going to get into why it doesn't feel like either of those things, why it isn't either of those things. Do you guys have any reactions to that first section there?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you nailed some of the common aspects here, like the idea that there was that the experience could be sleep paralysis, which can be terrifying, right? It's one of the episodes that we've had the most response to over the years. It makes me wonder too about the sense that we don't talk about often enough, proprioception, which is the sensation of where your body parts are in space, even if you are not looking at them directly. Like that ties into things like the phantom hand experience that some people report or phantom limb when they experience an amputation. It also ties into this part of your story, Lori. You feel these toes, but you know you're alone in your bed. So you're feeling the sensation of something that is not part of your body. I'm interested by it. We got to keep going because I got to tell you, Lori, I don't know how you went back to sleep.
We can keep going and we'll talk about that. I just want to say I talked to Lori for quite a while today before recording this, and she says that she has experienced sleep paralysis since she was a kid. She knows exactly what it feels like. She knows what the experience is, and this was not that. She says
Excellent.
She was not still asleep when it occurred. and she was able to physically roll over in bed, and then was be able to sit up, and still was having this visual stimulation of this being that she described. I asked her, a couple times, like, describe to me more what you're looking at, and she said he was just lightning-like. He was white as lightning, and I could see through him, but he was as long as me, and you could tell it was in the shape of a person. And I only say it was male because the voice I heard was so deep. Really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and from what I understand, based just on the letter here, Lori, you said when this figure is speaking, they're speaking in a deeper voice, but they're speaking very, very quickly. Is that correct? Matt, when you and Lori spoke, were you able to get a sense of what, if anything, this figure was attempting to communicate, or even just snatches of phrases?
She said she was unable to tell, even if he was speaking English. It was difficult to tell. She said the utterances were so quick and deep that it was just she was experiencing such fear, like such a reaction to it, that she doesn't remember any of that. She doesn't recall exactly what was being said. And it's fascinating to me that perhaps this person or this thing wasn't even speaking English. But this is the point where I think we should continue down the letter, because there's more here, and Lori experienced more. She says, after this experience, she fell back to sleep immediately.
Crazy.
Oh,
How?
Well, because she said her oldest son came to join her in bed. He's a teenager. She probably felt safe with him. She was able to fall back asleep. However, the next day, my son came home from school. He was pale and exhausted. When I asked him what was wrong, he told me that he couldn't go back to sleep after this whole thing had happened and he joined her in bed, because he kept hearing a voice that sounded like his voice, and it was mumbling against the far bedroom wall. Okay. And Lori says he's correct. The man's voice was very similar to my son's, but in a deeper register. And that is what Lori confirmed to me, that both she and her son experienced this weird thing where it sounded like an older version of her son speaking. So that right there kind of blew my mind, and it made me start thinking about the Terminator franchise when there's time travel involved, and there's the lightning orb essentially that transports someone back through time. Just made me think about a lightning being that somehow was her son time traveling. Not saying that's what it is, but it made my mind reel.
I was thinking, not just specifically of Terminator here, but I was thinking of the concept of non-linear experiences with time.
So let's not stop. Let's keep going through this. So Lori says that this made her realize that there were a lot of other things that she had previously discounted that she and her family had experienced. She says that there were like coincidences that she rationalized. There's weird stuff. So on 2 different occasions, she said her child's bed, she's got 2 children, one is older, one is younger. Her younger child's bed was pushed out from the wall towards the middle of the room. It's a twin-size bed, so not huge and heavy, but it's still hefty, especially for a 3-year-old. And she was just wondering why it had happened. She figured her older son probably went in there and moved the bed. She spoke with both her sons. Neither of them had been in the room. Neither of them had moved the bed. They just thought, okay, well, that's a little weird. They pushed it back. But then it happened again, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. Her father was even involved, like thinking there was something weird going on there. Then on several different nights, she's awoken to the sound of a man mumbling at the furthest side wall of her bedroom. Also, the sounds of someone physically rustling around in that area of the room. She even experienced, at one point, that same voice rushing towards her. So like a voice beginning at the far end of a room and then moving towards her, just a disembodied voice moving towards her.
I swear to God, that immediately makes my mind go to a very popular horror movie sound design technique where the voice has reverb on it that's flipped backwards, so it kind of reverbs into the voice, and I kind of picture that like as a rushing kind of like, quality of like it moving through space at you. I've certainly never experienced anything like that, but that's just immediately what my mind hones into.
Sound localization. Yeah, there's another thing that's important here for this detail, Lori, which is that if you can localize or sense the direction and location of a sound, then it means that you are hearing these things through both ears, which is an important neurocognitive detail. Please continue, Matt. Well, because sometimes people have said they've only heard something in one ear. It's a small detail, but an important one to consider.
Absolutely. One of the things I love about Lori, when I spoke with her, she's very much attempting to rationalize everything. So she's attempting to figure out, well, what's the common denominator here? What's the most rational thing? It was probably my neighbor's television that was too loud, and I was just hearing it, and I was experiencing that when I hear the mumbling. There are a couple times when her bed would move right around 5 a.m., sometimes a little earlier, especially when her alarm wouldn't go off. She said her bed would be physically shaking and she would wake up to the physical movement of her bed rather than an alarm or her son coming in to wake her up the way he would sometimes. She's noticing a couple other things where there are objects that are displaced around the house or knocked over. And there's even an instance where all of her light bulbs went out on the same day, all the light bulbs in the place where she lives, which, that would be super unnerving if that occurred, or it could just be an electric, you could explain it away with some kind of electrical surge that caused all of the light bulbs to get too much power to them too quickly and then bust them all. A coincidence that doesn't happen often. But this is, I think, the last thing we're going to read from this email. And we'll consider it that this is how Lori ended it. I felt this man's body. I saw this man as bright as lightning. I heard this man. My son heard this man, and I will never unsee, unfeel, or unhear him. This happened.
Yeah, I mean, and what was your sense? I mean, obviously from the email, she really does strike a very analytical kind of tone. Like she really comes off as someone who is describing a thing, not like a half-remembered dream, but like a thing that happened to her. And like you said, Matt, very much trying to suss out and try to rationalize every little detail. Is that how she was on the phone as well, Matt?
She was very much like that on the phone, and it's something that has disturbed her pretty heavily, specifically because it appears to be affecting her son as well, and they seem to have shared experiences. So it doesn't feel like just something that happened in her sleep and then went away, or something she experienced in a dream state or in a sleep paralysis state. The fact that it bothered her son so much that he was just, it ruined his day essentially. Hearing this voice. And the other thing here is that I didn't go easy on Lori. I was asking her as, detailed questions about all of this stuff, and she was responding, not as somebody who was just making something up. I can't prove that to you or to myself that she wasn't making anything up, but she knows, and I certainly felt that she wasn't. And I'd ask her about the disappearing, because she said that this being appeared in her bed, then it just kind of disappeared when she said no, no, no. And she said that it was essentially half a second, couple milliseconds of like a fade out, and then just like nothing. And I would just say that I've experienced something like that before, where I've woken up from a dream. I'm still half asleep, kind of got like my eyes half closed or something. And my dream state is providing images. If you guys have ever seen that, kind of almost like images that are flowing downward or in a circular pattern, that you'll still get the light, essentially. I've experienced something like that, but never in the shape of a person with a physical sensation with an audible voice.
You might be surprised what you can do, because that is one of the side doors into lucid dreaming. I mean, I know we use this phrase often gets overused, but that really is a cognitive liminal state. If you're ever in that state, by the way, folks, which everybody is at some point, give yourself some credit. Try to just imagine some cool scenarios. You're basically at that point, you're in the holodeck where you can still steer to a degree. But then once you're out like a light, it's not you driving anymore. It's your subconscious, or arguably you experiencing a quantum look into a universe just to the left of ours, or to the right, or another timeline.